Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdarchist Dave, and tonight I'm joined by...
Nerdarchist Ted. How are you doing this fine and lovely evening, sir?
I'm doing good. We are here to talk about desolate wastes and Dungeons and Dragons. Let's talk about Under the Dome and exploring the desolate wastes in that D&D campaign setting.
This is another one that, we've spent, quite a lot of time with. And, you've been, pretty much the central GM for, but it's something we've had an absolute blast exploring and playing within, pretty much right outside our dome, outside of Crystalia is the Sea of Blades, which to me is absolutely fabulous to have this, plains that are full of grass that are pretty much like sharp as razor blades.
Yeah, so the thing about Under the Dome is virtually all wasteland. That's kind of the premise. It may come in some different varieties and different flavors, but at its core, it is inhospitable, very difficult to survive. And I guess I have a type because, again, we have chaos magic that kind of runs rampant and has kind of destroyed the world. And it is kind of hostile, not in the way Other Skies, Aether is hostile, where it wants to be used and it wants to burn you out. In Under the Dome, the chaos magic takes shape in what we call chaos storms, and where in Other Skies, I feel like it almost feels sentient, like it has a will of its own. Not so much in Under the Dome. It's it is just a force of nature that comes and transforms things. And the adventuring party has experienced a couple chaos storms at this point. And, they're just random effects, sometimes summoning monsters, sometimes turning random things into crystal form, which then can be turned into grind or made into a religious icon if that's what you want to do with it. They did have one effect where all of their magic items activated at the same time, which made them very unhappy because if it was a single-use item, it was gone. And if it was something with charges, it just had one less charge. Not as big a deal. But they lost a fortune in scrolls and potions, I think. One of the players, all their gear was teleported like a mile away, leaving them sitting there naked.
That was amusing.
Less so for the player's character, but the adventurers had fun with it. So no matter what flavor of wasteland you're in that setting, Under the Dome, chaos storms can happen anywhere. So it's just an added thing that you have to be worried about and concerned about. Like when I think in that same storm, also a huge chunk of the land broke off and became a floating island, essentially. And some of you are like, this would be great. We should make this our base. And then other people are like, yeah, but what if another storm comes through and unfloats it?
It was like, well, we don't have our own bubble.
Yeah.
How are we going to protect ourselves from the dome? Now, mind you have to understand the characters in this particular adventuring party. Out of the five of us that started this thing off, four of us started with either an 8 or a 10 strength. Intelligence. We had 2 8s and 2 10s. And then we had the artificer who started at like a 16 or an 18. And it's like, yeah, this is not going to be, Mind Squad.
Yeah.
And Random Treasure wound up, giving us a headband of intellect, somebody in the party with a 19. So we're a little bit more thought out with our plans and grounding, but that doesn't necessarily stop the barbarians, fighters from charging headlong into trouble.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, so you guys have dealt with the Sea of Blades, where if you're not wearing enough armor, you just take damage for moving through it. It also, really changes the landscape as far as the fauna, because only things that aren't going to be affected by the blades of grass are going to be found there, right? They either have to have a way of avoiding it or a way of it not affecting them, enduring it. You got one of the main things you guys had dealt with there with Thri-Kreen, and their hard shells were able to deflect the blades of grass. You guys had modified your grind mobiles to help with that somewhat as well, to keep the blades of grass off your legs. I think that was something you guys had modified early on. Basically made covers that your legs kind of went in, like shields for them.
Yep.
So there's also, like, right around the city itself, you guys, there's the petrified forest, which is redwood-like trees. It's a forest of redwood-like trees, but they've all been petrified. They're all They're all made of stone, or maybe they were stone before. So, in that environment, there's going to be less of the natural things that you're going to rely on for survival, right? It would almost be like you would need the skill set that it would take to survive in the mountains or crags or barrens more so than a forest, because
Right.
while you will get shade, there is no sustenance to be gained from, stone trees.
You're not cutting it down to start a fire. There's not going to be, squirrels climbing up and down to, hunt. It's petrified. It's not growing.
Right. Or although you might be able to build a log cabin that the big bad wolf can't blow down.
Well, I would take an awful lot of stone cutting checks.
It would. But I believe that is the big bad wolf's weakness.
Yeah, I would imagine.
So there is also the Wailing Waste. And it basically is full of these giant cacti that when the wind blows through, it makes these eerie sounds. That's why it's called the Wailing Waste. So, and that is kind of a little bit more deserty. And all of this is like within miles of the city. It's not even like you're going that far and you're encountering these different biodomes. And then there is the Sea of Woe. It is not regular salt water. It is just made of acid, which you guys did have to explore and go into. And
we had to find a way to cross.
Yeah, and you did receive some acid burns for your troubles. And also you discovered that apparently trolls that live in and near the bog of eternal acid are not affected by acid.
Like I wanted to take my own dome. And I said, far to the west. Don't even know how far, but long enough away that, it's going to go past all the hazards and stuff that you've already, have already talked about. You're going to have to go through 2 or 3 of them at least before you're going to get over to, the Dome of Valarium, where there it's in the midst of the black sands. So the chaos storms, while they're unpredictable everywhere, they are much more common in Valarium because the skies overhead roil with clouds most of the time. They've had to find other ways, usually through magic, to actually, produce light and produce daylight to actually have crops and what have you. It's not hard packed soil. It is desert like, so that, most wheeled vehicles aren't going to function the same way. So like, your vehicles that would be deployed out of Valarium are probably going to be a little bit different than what you might else see, but it's attracted, or it's manifested this type of metal that actually absorbs the chaos magic. So it has the ability to kind of change what the setting is in this place, as opposed to having to, go harvest grind. You could have this, almost energized metal be like a battery. I say, all right, well, let's put my battery out and hope the lightning strikes it, not me, to kind of charge it. But I wanted to make a custom material for the world that wasn't just like, oh, let's make something that's good at magic items and that kind of stuff, but it'd be something that's more industrial use for the setting. And it's actually what the dome is comprised of, this weave of Ballium, which is this, let's see here. So it appears as a dark, almost obsidian-like metal with faint swirling patterns that shimmer violet and crimson under certain lighting. Smooth and cold to the touch and has a density similar to steel, with a strange elasticity that resists deformation. A little bit weirder to deal with, and therefore you also kind of have to know how to work it. There's complications where that's concerned. But I like coming up with new metals and things. And just like you've got your Kreen, I've got my own set of monstrous humanoids that lie out in the waste that don't seem to have as much problem with the chaos storms as those living in the dome. But I'm happy with what I've got with them so far.
Nice. So we were talking about this a little bit Saturday night after our Zoo Mafia game, where to me it kind of just sounds like where Talia is designed to repel chaos magic and keep its effects at bay. The city you're working on, your dome, is to me almost seems like a lightning rod, where it's attracting it to absorb it. And I could also just like see like in my mind like the storm effects and the energy being released, and like lightning strikes like striking for a distance and like almost like a straight line heading towards the dome itself as it like strikes the ground over and over again until it gets to the dome, and it starts getting absorbed to the dome. But almost it seems like in some ways the area just outside of your dome might be even more hostile because of the fact that it's constantly drawing the storms to it.
Yep. Yeah, that was my kind of take on it. I've loved the concept of our chaos storms that we came up with, and we've used them from our games for years. And to really have them play a much larger role in Under the Dome, is a really important thing to me. So I'm like, well, if I'm going to create a section of the world for me to run in, play in, what have you, let me really layer in thick. And like I've got what I would constitute as chaos elementals that I've taken, like unpainted minis that were supposed to be either like clear or invisible or elemental, and painted them up in what I would call like the chaos magic paintbrush. Very violet and purple as a base, but then other colors swirling within. So like at any moment's notice, if I needed, I could go anywhere from a large to a huge chaos elemental and just plop that down on the battle map and say, boom, deal with it. I've loved it.
So you're saying because, you have the black sands that surround your dome, that wheeled vehicles are probably going to have a difficulty. So are you thinking maybe like tracked vehicles, like tanks almost?
So my thought pattern was to do two different options, was to have more tracked things like your tanks, or to go in a more quadrupedal type scenario. Like, you want construct mount, essentially, just to give people the option for doing something different, quadrupedal legs on it, and have this thing, run. Like, sure, it looks ungainly and weird unless you get the movements right. But I think it would be hysterical to have this kind of option and to be like, okay, well, these things are made to not be affected by the sands. So I want to make individualized vehicles in both, as well as group vehicles in both.
Well, what about like, I kind of dig the idea of that they literally just made steeds, but mechanical ones. Yeah, so like I'm envisioning the iron steeds, except for they look like camels.
So like that option to me is okay. It can be personalized however you want. Like, do you want a face on the front of your ride, if you will? And then what do you want that thing to look like? Like, look at bikers these days. They love, personalization. There are people who spend thousands and thousands of dollars to get their rides pimped out with, lights and colors and spinning thises and what have you. So in a desolate wasteland of Under the Dome, why wouldn't the affluent people not do the exact same thing? Why would you not have it be decked out the way you want it to look?
So how far do the sands extend around the city?
I have not gotten that far. I started off with the concept, and I made the ruling council for the city. I made the monster and said, okay, I have other things I need to get done. And then before I knew it, my weekend was over and I had to get back to work.
Hear me out. Boats on skis.
Okay.
When they sail across the black sands. And maybe like their mast is made of that same stuff. So
all right.
And also like woven into the sail itself, or maybe the sail is actually made out of plates of Valarium. Is that what you're calling it?
Ballium, yeah.
Valarium. Yeah, plates of Ballium. And so the whole thing, is, kind of powers it. Now, maybe they have these ships that go out just for that purpose of getting like filling like, smaller arcane batteries, as opposed where for more for private use per se than what the city's using it for.
Okay. Sorry, I'm taking notes because I like the idea. I don't want to forget.
But then also I was thinking like they could do like yacht races. And also like you could have different, like there could be like larger and smaller vessels, like maybe wealthier citizens actually own yachts and take the yachts out, almost like pleasure cruising, almost like, like kind of like thrill seekers, but they're still kind of safe.
Yeah, I definitely dig all of that. I had not contemplated, making a sand port for yacht.
Hear me out. Black sandworms, right, is one of the hazards. And here's my thoughts.
All right.
They created the dome in the city as a way to harness the energy of the chaos magic and also to stave off the ill effects of the chaos magic. But there was an unintended consequence. The black sands weren't always there. The black sands exist from chaos storm after chaos storm whipping through towards the city. And, year after year, as time goes on, the sands expand further and further as the more chaos storms are drawn towards the city.
Okay.
So they also kind of trap themselves unintentionally.
All right. So the worms are being attracted to this place because of the sand?
Well, no. The worms themselves are just something that lives there, right? Either they evolved or they were transformed. The sands themselves are a side effect of them using Valarium to attract and harness the chaos storm.
All right, I gotta acquire some stuff to do with some black sandworms to add into my collection.
It will give you a new mini for you to craft or mod or paint as well. Yeah, or just make them the Beetlejuice worms. That would be so funny to constantly be talking about the black worms, the black sandworms, and how dangerous they are. And then your players finally like encounter them, and that's what you drop on the table. But yes, these are some of the dangers of the desolate wastelands of Under the Dome. So until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.